All right, guys, I have quite a story for you here. And there are so many problems with this CNN article, I don't even know where to begin. So I'll just say it up front. I think this is the single worst piece of propaganda I've ever seen in my life. And that's saying a lot, because I've seen a lot of horrible propaganda in my time doing this job for over a decade. So here's what the title is. Quote, "He got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him. Israeli soldiers returning from war struggle with trauma and suicide." Okay, here we go. A 40-year-old father of four, Eliran Mizrahi, deployed to Gaza after the deadly Hamas-led attack on Israel on October 7th. The Israeli military reservist returned a different person, traumatized by what he had witnessed in the war against Hamas in the Strip. His family told CNN 6 months after he was first sent to fight, he was struggling with PTSD back at home. Before he was due to redeploy, he took his own life. Quote, "He got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him, and he died after it because of the post-trauma," his mother, Jenny Mizrahi, said. The Israeli military has said it is providing care for thousands of soldiers who are suffering from PTSD or mental illnesses caused by trauma during the war. It is unclear how many have taken their own lives, as the IDF has not provided an official figure. They continue here. 1 year on, Israel's war in Gaza has killed more than 42,000 people. That's such a conservative number, according to the health ministry in the Strip, with the United Nations reporting that most of the dead are women and children. The war launched after Hamas killed 1,200 people and took more than, I believe that number is actually a little lower. They're using the outdated figure for October 7th. And as it now expands to Lebanon, some soldiers say they dread being drafted into yet another conflict. Quote, "A lot of us are very scared of getting drafted again to a war in Lebanon." An IDF medic who served 4 months in Gaza told CNN, speaking on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the matter, "A lot of us don't trust the government right now." Israeli authorities, with rare exceptions, have closed off Gaza to foreign journalists unless under IDF escort, making it difficult to capture the full extent of Palestinian suffering or the experiences of soldiers there. Israeli soldiers who fought in the enclave told CNN they witnessed horrors the outside world can never truly comprehend. Their accounts offer a rare glimpse into the brutality of what critics have called Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's forever war and the intangible toll it takes on soldiers who participate. For many soldiers, the war in Gaza is a fight for Israel's survival and must be won by any means. But the battle is also taking a mental toll that, due to stigma, is largely hidden from view. Interviews with Israeli soldiers, a medic, and the family of Mizrahi, the reservist who took his own life, provide a window into the psychological burden the war is casting on Israeli society. Okay, we're going to continue here, but look at the framing. There is more concern for the feelings of IDF soldiers who are engaging in mass murder than there is concern for the tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children who've been killed in Gaza. Wow. And look, you got to call a spade a spade. This is par for the course when it comes to U.S. media. Our allies get all of the benefits of full humanization. Our enemies get none of the benefits, and in fact, they have the opposite. It's full dehumanization. And you could see that with the kind of language that's used, right? If it's an Israeli civilian who was killed, it's brutal, it's barbaric, it's savage, it's every negative word in the dictionary. But if it's a Palestinian civilian that's killed, they use passive language. Palestinians passed away in a blast that occurred. And it's like, what are we doing here? We're seeping the sentence of all agency and all accurate descriptors because, again, the goal here is, and by the way, I think it's subconscious. I don't think they're like doing this on purpose, thinking and knowing they're doing it. But you're not hired for a mainstream media position unless you have internalized the framework of empire. And the framework is our allies good, our enemies bad. So let's write a long article detailing the mental health struggles of the soldiers who've killed over 50,000 Palestinians in Gaza. They say this, the mental health toll. Mizrahi deployed to Gaza on October 8th last year and was tasked with driving a D9 bulldozer. A D9 bulldozer. A 62-ton armored vehicle that can withstand bullets and explosives. He was a civilian for most of his life, working as a manager at an Israeli construction company. After witnessing the massacre committed by Hamas, he felt the need to fight. The reservist spent 186 days in the enclave until he sustained injuries to his knee, followed by hearing damage in February when a rocket-propelled grenade struck his vehicle, his family said. He was pulled out of Gaza for treatment and in April was diagnosed with PTSD, receiving weekly talk therapy. His treatment did not help. Quote, "They didn't know how to treat them." The soldiers, Jenny, who lives in the Israeli Ma'ali Adumim settlement in the occupied West Bank, said, yeah, tell me the framing from the illegal settler. I'd really appreciate that. Quote, they, the soldiers, said the war was so different. They saw things that were never seen in Israel. When Mizrahi was on leave, he suffered from bouts of anger, sweating, insomnia, and social withdrawal, his family said. He told his family that only those who were in Gaza with him could understand what he was going through. Quote, he always said, "No one will understand what I saw," his sister, Sheer, told CNN. Jenny wondered if her son killed someone and couldn't handle it. So this guy who survived, who made it out, and was saying, man, I saw horrible things. They're concerned about what he saw and what he's feeling. Here's a question for you. I wonder how the people on the side that are getting genocided feel. I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder what a child in Gaza is feeling. I wonder what somebody who lost 20 members of their family are feeling. I wonder what a kid who underwent amputation with no anesthesia, I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder what it feels like to leave one area, go to a humanitarian zone, get bombed at the humanitarian zone, and then go to another humanitarian zone and get bombed there. I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder their mental anguish. So if these people are struggling, how do you think Palestinians are feeling? Oh my God. Oh my God. All right, let's keep going. He saw a lot of people die. Maybe he even killed someone. But we don't teach our children to do things like this, she said. So when he did this, something like this, maybe it was a shock for him. Guy Zakin, Mizrahi's friend and co-driver of the Bulldozer, provided further insight into their experience in Gaza. We saw very, very, very difficult things, Zakin told CNN. Things that are difficult to accept. The former soldier has spoken publicly about the psychological trauma endured by Israeli troops in Gaza. In a testimony to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, in June, Zakin said that on many occasions, soldiers had to run over terrorists, dead and alive, in the hundreds. Quote, everything squirts out, he added. Now do you see why I call this the single worst piece of propaganda of all time? They're trying to get you to feel bad for these people and worry about their feelings. When there is an admission in this piece that they are running over, quote, hundreds. Now they say, oh, they're terrorists. But as we all know, it's 90% innocent civilians who are being killed in Gaza. So in other words, they ran over hundreds of civilians. They ran over civilians with a fucking bulldozer, and they want you to care about their feelings. As opposed to the feelings of, I don't know, the people who were run over who are now dead. Well, obviously you can't care about their feelings. They're gone. But what about their family members? What about the other Palestinian civilians who witnessed this with their own two eyes? Who saw a genocidal hysteria and mania? The likes of which is unparalleled except for Nazi Germany? Oh my God. Zakin says he can no longer eat meat, as it reminds him of the gruesome scenes he witnessed from his bulldozer in Gaza. Hey, here's an idea. You could have not bulldozed over hundreds of innocent civilians in Gaza. You could have quit. You could have accepted the punishment if they say you're getting locked up for deserting the military. Okay, accept the punishment. You could have not done this. Instead, you sat there in your fucking bulldozer and you kept running over people, and now you want us to care about your feelings. He says he can't eat meat. The implication here is like, yeah, those Palestinians we ran over, it was a bunch of meat on the ground. Again, look at this. Look at this. How did this get through a whole room of people? How did the editor allow this? How did they think this was a good idea? What are you doing? Can you imagine an article in 1941 in Germany describing the mental trauma taken on by Nazi soldiers? Because that's what we're reading right now. That's what we're reading. And if anybody's going to say, oh, well, hold on, Kyle, you know, the Nazis purposely killed civilians and the IDF is not purposely killing civilians, I got a fucking bridge to sell you if you think that's true about Israel. They 100% know they're killing innocent civilians. They are okay with it. They are fine with it because they view them as all guilty enough. They're all guilty enough. They're all close enough to Hamas. Who cares that there's 30 or 40,000 Hamas members and 2.3 million people in Gaza? They're all guilty enough. That's why, by the way, they cut off all food, fuel, water, and electricity into Gaza, knowing they were doing collective punishment of 2.3 million people. They knew that, but they did it anyway. Why? Because again, to them, they're all Hamas. They're all guilty. Quote, when you see a lot of meat outside and blood, both ours and theirs, then it really affects you when you eat, he told CNN, referring to bodies as meat. Do I even need to respond to this? Like, do I even need to spell out for you how depraved and despicable and repulsive this is? Is that necessary? I think anybody with a functioning brain can read this and go, oh, wow, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? we're humanizing the people who are committing the mass murder and not talking to or understanding the people who are currently being subject to a genocide and ethnic cleansing. He maintains that the vast majority of those he encountered were, quote, terrorists. Oh, I'm sure, fella. Quote, the civilians we saw, we stopped and brought them water to drink. Who believes this? And let them eat from our food. Who the fuck believes this? He recalled, adding that even in such situations, Hamas fighters would shoot at them. Oh my God. Oh my God. CNN is just writing this. They're writing this as if like, yeah, plausible, maybe. Oh my God. Quote, so there is no such thing as citizens, he said, referring to the ability of Hamas fighters to blend with civilians. Quote, this is terrorism. So in other words, totally contradicts everything he just said. Can't help himself, lets the cat out of the bag. Bro, when we saw civilians, we tried to help them. But also, by the way, there are no such thing as civilians, so everybody we killed was a terrorist. CNN needs to fucking apologize and retract this article and take a long look in the mirror as to what the fuck they think their job is. This is grotesque propaganda. This is like I'm reading fucking Der Stürmer or whatever Nazi publication there is. When soldiers do encounter civilians, however, many face a moral dilemma. According to the IDF medic who spoke to CNN anonymously, there was a very strong collective attitude of distrust among Israeli soldiers toward the Palestinians in Gaza. Oh, you don't say. Is that why they killed 90% civilians? Is that why they did a total siege of Gaza? Is that why they're not allowing in food and letting people starve? Is that why there's totally unsanitary conditions and there's outbreaks of diseases like polio? There was a notion that Gazans, including civilians, quote, are bad, that they support Hamas, that they help Hamas, that they were hiding ammunition, the medic said. In the field, however, some of these attitudes changed. When you actually see Gazan civilians in front of your eyes, they said, oh, I'm sure. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You guys were doing this mass murder spree, and you went, you know what? I actually disagree with this mass murder spree, which is why I'm not going to pull out of the military and tell all and suffer the consequences. I'm just going to keep doing the mass murder spree and then whine about my feelings afterwards. The IDF has said that it does all it can to minimize civilian casualties in Gaza. I can't. Including by sending text messages, making phone calls, and dropping evacuation leaflets to warn civilians ahead of attacks. So again, this is CNN doing genocide apologia. That's what this is. Because everybody knows that all of this is PR bullshit. Everybody knows that. But CNN credulously is, oh, yeah, the IDF says they're the most moral army in the world. That's what they are, yes. Forget that they bombed over 30 hospitals and countless schools and UN buildings and power plants and civilian aid workers and go on and on and on and on and on. Jesus Christ. Despite this, civilians in Gaza have been repeatedly killed in large numbers, including when sheltering in areas the military itself has designated as safe zones. The mental health toll in Gaza is likely to be enormous. Write an article about that. Relief groups and the UN have repeatedly highlighted the catastrophic mental health consequences of the war on civilians in Gaza, many of whom had already been scarred by a 17-year blockade and several wars with Israel. In an August report, the UN said the experiences of Gazans defy traditional biomedical definitions of PTSD, given that there is no post in Gaza's context. In other words, it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, it is current traumatic stress disorder. Think about what that does to a person. After Mizrahi took his own life, videos and photos surfaced on social media of the reservists bulldozing homes and buildings in Gaza and posing in front of vandalized structures. Some of the images, which were purportedly posted on his now-removed social media accounts, appeared in a documentary that he was interviewed for on Israel's Channel 13. His sister, Shir, said she saw a lot of comments on social media accusing Mizrahi of being a murderer, cursing at him and replying with unpleasant emojis. Oh, does that hurt your feelings? Quote, it was hard, she said, adding that she tried her best to overlook it. I know he had a good heart. Yes, he took a bulldozer and rolled over hundreds of meat people who were laying there, but he meant well, bro. He meant well. Like, he would say happy birthday to me and stuff on my birthday. You know what I'm saying? Like, all sins forgiven, bro. I can't do this. This is like a hideously grotesque propaganda. It's like if in, a hardcore right-wing Russian publication, they write about the mental health struggles of the Russians on the front line who are attacking Ukrainian civilians, right? That's what it's like. That's what it's like. Oh, your feelings hurt. You guys should have never done this shit in the first place. You guys should be on trial for war crimes. But certainly at the very least, spare me your bitching and your moaning and pop a Lexapro and shut the fuck up, right? That's at the very least. But no, here we are. I'm not going to go on because this is already like, holy shit. But, oh man. More humanity is awarded to the mass murdering Israeli soldiers than is awarded to Palestinian babies and toddlers and innocent men and women. Think about that. Think about that. I've seen very rarely, once in a blue moon, you get a specific story about a specific person who was killed in Gaza, right? I remember there was one YouTuber who was killed. We discussed that. There was a 19-year-old the other day who was killed. I believe it was in Lebanon. We talked about that. Mehdi Hassan brought that up in his debate with the IDF goon right to his face. But understand, there are literally over 50,000 people like that with specific stories and dreams and hopes and families, and they have a job or they go to school or whatever, right? Over 50,000. How many of those articles have we gotten in CNN? We get an article about the feelings of mass murderers before we get an article about the victims or the family members of the victims. That says it all. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.